So when I was in prison, there were a lot of different gangs. There exists a multitude of gangs within the New York prison system, some stronger than others. At the time, Bloods were the strongest prison gang. Latin Kings had a good amount of numbers too. You had Dominican Power, which is probably the smallest gang, maybe after GDs, because GDs really ain't have no numbers. Crips had a decent amount of numbers, but they were spread all over the state. And anywhere you went to as a Crip, you was getting into some shit. So when I was in Green, I was cool with the Latin Kings, the Netas, and the Dominican Power. And a lot of the Netas was from Brooklyn, and I used to live in Brooklyn, so I was cool with a lot of dudes from Brooklyn and shit. And they had got into some type of situation. I don't know what the altercation was from or what caused it. But I was in the dorm and I was talking to my homeboy Feli, and he's from Rochester. And I came out and he was like, damn, he's like, why everybody got their boots on? He had his sandals on and shit. So he like, man, I'm going to put my boots on. So he went and put his boots on and came back out. We just sitting out there. We don't know what's going on, but it's like there's a bunch of tension going on. But we're not involved in the situation between those gangs because that shit ain't got nothing to do with us. And prison, minding your business between gang conflicts is always a great idea. So the Dominicans, there was like 3 of them that came out, and there was a Latin King dude sitting at the microwave. I can't remember his name, but he was sitting at the microwave, and the Dominican just went up and knocked him clean out. Like, he put something in the microwave, he just hit him, boom, one punch, knocked his ass clean out. The other Latin King dude, Pun. Now, Pun ain't soft. Pun was in the day room. So when you come out of the dorm in New York State Prison, there's like a big area here where there's TV at, and then there's a smaller day room. It's called the little day room. There's like a door that goes to it. So they went in there, all 3 of them, and jumped on Pun, right? So Pun was trying to fight back, but they had cut Pun in his face because when he came out, I seen the razor cut and he was bleeding and shit, but Pun was trying to get it in. So Pun comes out and Pun is trying to go after them. But we had a big ass CO that day. He probably like 6'5", like 350 pounds. So the big ass country white dude. So the CO came out and grabbed Pun, and Pun couldn't get past him. He pulled the pin already. So the backup was coming. Backup came in. And I don't know what was up with the COs. Like, you should have recognized that there was like some type of gang war going on. So I'm going home. Well, I'm not going home. I'm going on work release, which is basically still prison. But I'm going on work release the next day. So I'm like, I'm going to a work release facility. I just got approved. Like, I do not need this shit. But that night, well, the next day, because that happened at nighttime, the next day when I get up, I'm thinking shit is over with, right? I guess they had whatever gang meetings to set shit up. So I told the homies, I was like, yo, I'm going to the yard because I'm going home tomorrow. I got to tell everybody, like, where I'm going. I got to get the homie my address who's in the other dorm. So I go to the yard, and the homie's not in the yard. I'm the only one there. So I'm like, man, what the fuck? Now, mind you, I slept all day. I wasn't paying attention to nothing. So I went direct. I'm going home the next day. Like, I want to be involved in shit. So I didn't realize, like, there was a gang war going on. So I get to the yard, and there's only Dominican Power, Latin Kings, and the Yatas in the yard. Nobody else is out there. I'm on a south side yard, so nobody else is out there. So I'm sitting on the table, and Bolon comes up to me. He was one of the head Latin Kings. Me and Bolon was cool as fuck. This a big 6'3", big 300-pound dude that's the humblest, nicest motherfucker in the world. So Bolon comes up to me, and he's like, yo, listen. He said, just stay right here. This don't involve you. This ain't got nothing to do with you, right? And I'm like, all right. So then Red Rock came up to me. Reddy Rock was one of the heads of Dominican Power, and he came up to me. And he was like, yo, Cal, like, just sit here. Like, bro, you good? Like, this shit don't involve you. Just stay right here. I told all my peoples, like, you ain't got nothing to do with this shit. Motherfuckers playing basketball, lifting weights. All of a sudden, everybody started fighting in the yard. I'm sitting on the table. And I'm like, man, I shouldn't have come out here. I'm not even going home the next day. Motherfuckers start fighting. They stabbing each other, cutting each other, chasing each other, hitting motherfuckers with weights. That shit went on for about a minute. The COs pulled the pin. So you heard the alarm go off immediately. COs is running to the yard. All of a sudden, everybody stopped fighting. Now, it's crazy because motherfuckers is stabbed trying to pretend like they playing basketball. Like, bro, you're bleeding through your shirt. Like, nobody's falling for this shit. Like, they know that you was just involved in this big gang war that just popped off, but nobody wants to get new charges or go to the box, etc. So Everybody's fighting and shit. And mind you, I'm Hispanic. So when I get to the gate, they're letting people out one at a time because they're checking people for blood or for like marks on their hands to see if people was fighting and shit like that. I ain't have nothing to do with the fighting, so they see that. But I had this one dickhead CO. So I'm on the fence, and the dickhead CO was like, "Oh, I know you had something to do with these Germans fighting." Germans is what they call Latin kings because they say they act like Hispanic Nazis, right? So I'm like, I don't got nothing to do with nobody fighting. Like, I'm not in none of these games right here. Like, let me go, right? So there was a whole bunch of shit going on in the yard. So when the CO turned his back, I booked it. Went right back to the dorm. Like, I just walked off. Like, and I walked fast. I walked up out of there like, motherfucker, you already searched me. Like, I'm out of here. He couldn't even come chase me. He was the biggest dickhead CO. He couldn't even come chase me because there was so much shit going on. Now, the same time that went on, there was fights going on all over the compound. So they was busy as shit. Next day, I left. Next day, I got transferred to the work release facility. I know that CO was looking for me the next night. That CO can suck a dick. I don't even remember his name, but he's a piece of shit, and you can suck a dick. If you ever see this, you's a bitch, your mother's a bitch, and whoever raised you and whoever you was around is bitches too, and you was a fucking coward. Next day, I went to work release. That shit didn't last too long because I was right back in prison like a month later. So, yeah, well, you in prison anyway, because when you go to work release, like, you go home, but you got to come back to the prison every weekend until they, like, let you out. And, yeah, violated on that shit, end up going back to prison anyways. It is what it is. But, yeah, that shit was crazy to see everybody fighting and stabbing. You ain't got nothing to do with it. You just standing there like, damn. Like, I ain't Latin King, Neta, or Dominican power. I ain't got nothing to do with that shit. But that was the start of Dominicans forcing their respect in the New York prisons, because that's what they said. The Dominicans said, y'all gonna respect Dominicans. That's what motherfuckers yell before they start fighting in the yard. That was the start of them getting their fucking respect.